Hello everyone, welcome to another Narc Survivor live video. This time in the city centre of Malaysia, and we're going to be talking about, will the narcissist ever be happy? Because of course it should be very clear to anyone from observing their choices, decisions, actions, behaviours, they're clearly not happy. They're very angry, they're miserable, they've always got a problem with you, they're always looking for something to be wrong, and no matter how perfect you make it for them, they'll always find something wrong with it. And of course the reason why is because of this internal state of unhappiness and dissatisfaction. Our happiness is generated from within, so nothing outside of us is ever going to complete that. Nothing outside of us is going to bring us happiness. That can only come from the inside. Now, of course, things outside of us can complement us. They can make us feel better, maybe for a short period of time. But that happiness has to come from within. If you weren't feeling happy before you engaged in a certain activity, you're not going to feel better afterwards, and if anything, you might just feel a lot worse. And of course the reason why is because you're disconnecting from yourself and you're trying to distract yourself from the sense of who you actually are. And this is something that narcissists train us to do, because of course when we're connected to ourselves and we remember everything that was done to us, it puts them under a lot of stress, it puts them under a lot of pressure, and then that's when they begin to act out, they begin to lash out at you, because they just want to keep that down. It's like they're trying to hold a ball underwater. And you don't even have to say anything, you don't have to confront them, just you being there, or just them being aware that you've moved on and you're somewhere happy without them. This is then causing a lot of pressure to build up inside of them. And it's almost like a volcano. As many of you know, I was at Mount Brono volcano in Indonesia recently. So it's very much like that. They're trying to hold everything within, but then it just keeps coming up to the surface, and they're doing anything they can just to keep it down. And what they're trying to keep down is that true sense of who they are. They constantly feel destabilized, even if you're not there. Just even the thought of you moving on and you're at peace with yourself, it really irritates them, because they're not at peace with themselves. They're very unstable, and it's because they're having this constant battle in their minds. They do not accept themselves. They do not accept the things that they have done to you and to the people before you. They do not accept themselves at all. And this is why they do the things that they do, because as Dr. Romani mentioned in her videos, narcissists have a shame abuse cycle. So they feel shame, and then they have to abuse you even more. They have to bombard you with things, with information. They have to manipulate people. They have to get a source of supply. And all that is, when they seek out a source of supply, which is what I was to the narcissist, and I'm sure that's what many of you were to them as well. As a source of supply, it just helps to distract them. It's a form of escapism. Essentially, it's the same thing as a drug, or like drinking alcohol. Just doing anything to numb their minds. Because the last thing a narcissist wants is to have to reflect on who they are and all of the horrible things that they have done. Because yes, of course, deep down they are aware of who they really are and all of the horrible things that they have done to people. They are aware of that, and that's why they hide it. And that's why when you confront them on it, they don't want to accept it, they deny it, they push it onto you, they blame shift, they use Darvo, reverse the victim and offender. And it's all because they don't want to accept themselves. And let's add a bit of humor into it. It's kind of like a closet homosexual who may be married to a woman. Of course, throughout all of that time, they may be feeling a lot of shame because they're hiding who they actually are. The only difference, though, in that scenario is that the closet homosexual may want to come out and be who they are. They're just worried about what other people think. So in those scenarios, it may not cause that much shame. Because with the narcissist, they don't even accept themselves. They're very concerned about their image. And while homosexuality is accepted, the things that narcissists do, that is not accepted in this world. It's not socially acceptable. So of course they hide it, they suppress it, they deny it, and they don't even like themselves because they want to maintain this clean image of themselves, when actually that's nothing like who they actually are. And this is why they experience so much anxiety, so much depression. This is why they're always on edge, they're always raging. They're always fault finding, nitpicking. It's like no matter what you're doing, no matter where you are, they've always got to find something wrong. And if there isn't something wrong, they will create a problem. They will go out of their way, they will go above and beyond to create chaos, to recreate their internal state, what's going on in their minds. Because they're constantly experiencing chaos in their minds. And they want to project that onto the environment, so then they don't feel like there's something wrong with them internally. And they can do this in various ways. They may triangulate you with someone, seek out a new source who hasn't figured them out yet. They haven't done anything to them yet. They can also bring in their flying monkeys. And you'll notice the same pattern of behavior with the flying monkeys as well. They're also very unstable. They're narcissistic. They're heavily concerned with their image and getting a response from you, blaming you for everything. Because I think most people are very intuitive, and at some level they all know when what they're doing is wrong, when they're a bad person. And so that's why even when they bring flying monkeys into it, they all act the same way as the narcissist. And so the narcissist, most narcissists, they will never be happy. Because in order for them to be happy, they would have to come out. They would have to accept themselves. They would have to reveal who they really are, instead of masking it, instead of pretending to be something they're not. They would have to fully accept themselves and be authentic. Because by having that authenticity, that's how we can then generate our happiness from within. It comes from accepting ourselves. But of course, that's something that most narcissists aren't going to do. They're not going to accept themselves. And while you may know who they really are, of course, when they get around you, they feel like they're under tremendous pressure. And that's not because you're doing anything to them. You may just be being yourself. You may be at peace with yourself. And it could be something where you're just minding your own business, you're listening to music, you're watching TV, and then the narcissist comes in and they just want to throw everything into shambles. They want to create a problem. There may have been no problem before, but there was a problem, you just couldn't see it. The problem existed in their minds. They were feeling destabilized because that's how they feel. When they do all of these things and they're not held accountable for it, and they try to hide it, they deny it, they suppress it, that takes up a lot of energy for them to be deceptive, for them to hold all of that within themselves. And that's why they have to create chaos. That's why they have to cause problems wherever they go. So they will never be happy for that reason. Because they can't accept themselves. They don't accept who they are. They don't accept the things that they have done. They dissociate from it. They're already dissociated, but when they're about to do something, because some of the things they do are premeditated, the process in their minds is that they're actually going to go into a different character now to deflect the shame onto someone else. And by doing that, they dissociate, they disconnect from themselves, because they don't want to accept who they really are. They don't want to accept the things that they do. And that's why when you're dealing with a narcissist, they're very fragile. And everything has to be orchestrated. There can never be just a natural environment with a narcissist. If you're having a conversation with them, they will dominate it. And everything has to be about what they want to talk about. It has to go their way. They have to be able to produce the effect that they want, so that they can disown parts of themselves and then assign them to you. And that's pretty much what they do throughout their lives. Every day, all they're ever thinking about, whether consciously or unconsciously, the process in their minds is how do they rid themselves of these parts that they don't like about themselves? How do they deflect these emotions onto someone else? How do they blame someone else for the things that they have done? And that's how, when you get around them, you end up becoming more and more like them, and they become more and more like you. So they begin to destabilize you, and it appears as though they become more calm and relaxed, because they just don't like themselves. They don't accept themselves. And I know everything's starting to blunder down in the background. It took me a while actually before I began this video to try and find a quiet spot. As you know, wherever I go, the noise follows me. And that's why most of my videos, wherever I've set the spot to film, at some point in the video, you then see me move into a different spot. But that's how it is when you watch a lot of my videos. There's always tons of distractions. There's always so much going on in the background and so much disturbance. Having to move around, there's all this noise in the background, because it's just, there's a lot of people who, they want to project, they want to deflect, they want to make noise and not let things to be natural, because then that's unfavorable for them. They see reality as being against them. But actually, I can tell you, reality is not against anyone. It was never set up to be that way. Reality is for all of us. It's in all of our favors. If we just accept it, if we just accept our authentic selves, then everything will work for you. The reason why they have all of these problems and all of these things go wrong for them is because they deny themselves. They don't want to accept themselves. And that's why there's always so much chaos, because their body is just screaming out to them, telling them to accept it, to accept who they are, what they're trying to push away, what they're trying to hide. And many of you may have had this experience with a narcissist as well, where they're constantly pushing and provoking you, and what you resist, it persists, and you just have to accept it. That doesn't mean that you've got to let them harm you and just have their way with you, of course, and just let them orchestrate things in the way that they would like, which, as you may know, is going to be straight down to hell with them. Of course, maintain your boundaries, but when they're triggering you, it's because you're not reflecting on something that your mind wants you to reflect on. Again, they will never be happy. They will always be erratic. They will always be all over the place, because in any moment they just do not feel comfortable in their own skin. And it's like they just want to escape out of their bodies. Wherever they are, they just want to be anywhere else but there, because they don't feel comfortable. They don't accept themselves. And that's why they will never be happy. They will always be very angry and miserable. And when you're around them, they will cause all sorts of problems for you. They will accuse you of all sorts of things and just point the finger at you, blame you for everything, because they want to take the heat off of themselves. And of course, then by doing that, by pressuring you when the pressure is actually on them, it then validates the false self. It makes them feel clean, it makes them feel innocent. But of course, as we know, they are anything but that. They've done a lot of bad things to people. But you will see that most of the things that they do, it's really just them doing anything to avoid reflecting on their shame and to deflect it onto someone else. And that's why many of them are alcoholics. They use drugs. They just do anything to avoid reflecting on themselves. Because you've got to think, many of these narcissists, if not all, they're all engaged in immoral and illegal activities. So they're doing things that are not socially acceptable. They're doing things that are wrong. And deep down they know that they are not good people. And so they try to run away from it, and it's too much work, it's too painful for them to come out of it. And especially narcissists who they're engaged in these types of things and they haven't been caught. It incentivizes them to keep doing it. And of course, because of that, they've got to have someone to blame, someone to target, someone to victimize. They've got to have a source of supply who they can blame everything on. So essentially what you see with a narcissist is in any moment they're just trying to disown parts of themselves onto someone else. And that's really it, because that's really all that a person can do when you're around them. A person can give you only what they have to give. So whoever they are, whatever they're doing, they can only put that onto you. They cannot give you a part of who they're not. They cannot give you something that they're not. That's not possible. There's only two things that a person can do. And I apologize for the noise again in the background. I did just try to find a quiet place, but I will find another quiet place again. Forget, a person can only do two things. They can only give you what they've got. They can only be who they are. Or they can mirror something back to you. They can use mirrors. And that doesn't mean that if it seems like a person is being disingenuous, insincere, inauthentic, that they're just automatically reflecting you back to you. Sometimes that may be the case, but not always. What it could also mean is that they've mirrored from someone else in a different situation, and now they're reflecting that mirror onto you. And we see this with triangulation, when they're making comparisons. That could make you more like the person that they're triangulating you with. That they were mirroring, and then they're mirroring back onto you. But also, it could just be a situation that you were completely unaware of, you don't know anything about it, and the narcissist was mirroring someone else, and they're bringing these characteristics and traits into the situation with you, which of course is something that we see when a narcissist obtains a new source. So they may have been mirroring you before, they may have stolen your characteristics, and then they bring this into a new situation with a new person, and then they're using that to build something with them, which is completely inauthentic. And it's just wherever they go, whoever they move on to, it just becomes even more and more inauthentic, even less and less real, because nothing is generated from within. There is no authenticity. For it to be generated from within, they would have to accept who they are, the things that they have done, the way in which that they have behaved, without any dishonesty, without any deception. And of course, as we know, I'd like to say no narcissist, but most narcissists are not going to do that. Most of them are not going to do it. And instead what they're going to do is they're going to hold on to that facade for their lives. And they're going to work through you. They're going to maneuver themselves around you. And just swift in and out. Almost like a fish swimming in a pond. And to just avoid themselves being affected, feeling pressured to where things would otherwise come up, because they just want to keep it down like a ball underwater. They don't want to be held accountable for anything of who they actually are, based on how they act, how they behave. Because it's essentially the same thing as if a person went to a store and stole something, and then they're caught out, they're seen on CCTV. They can deny it as much as they want, but the fact is that something happened, something went missing from that store. Someone was responsible for it. So a person was involved. It doesn't matter how they switch characters. It doesn't matter what they do. The fact is that they're still who they are. Even when they think that they're role playing, it's still them. It doesn't matter what different characters they use, it's still them. Even if they've seen someone else do something and they adopt their traits and they're bringing that into a situation, that's still a part of them. That's still who they are. And no matter how much they deny or disown it, it's still them. But this could be a big part of the problem when you're dealing with narcissists, because of course, because they can never be happy, you can never be happy with them. So whatever they're experiencing, it tends to rub off on you, because they need a source of supply. They need that power, that life force to validate them, to make them feel real, to make them feel like they exist. And that could be it's the false self, where it's like they want to feel attractive and desirable, they want to feel powerful and important, and they need someone to validate that back to them. Without external validation, it's not possible. But they can also twist that around in you when they're discrediting you, because while you're validating them, you've got no validation for yourself, because they're stealing your life force. And then because they're narcissists, they will twist that on you, and then it's like, how can't you validate yourself? Why do you need their validation? Of course, without even them bringing into the argument how they're stealing your self-validation, your self-love, your self-esteem for themselves. So they don't even bring that into it. Because the root of it all is that they are destabilized. They cannot stabilize themselves from within, so they need a source of supply to feel like they are real, to feel like they exist. And they have to get that from someone. Sometimes they'll get it from you, and sometimes they'll have another source of supply if you're no longer falling for it, if you're no longer going along with it. And of course, as we know, if you don't validate them, if you don't see them as real, as perfect, as though they've never done anything wrong, then they will devalue you and use you as a negative source of supply, to where they're then pushing and provoking you, just doing anything to get a reaction out of you, just to make them feel powerful. Because then at least they don't have to feel insecure. At least, even though they may have done something wrong, they can still see it as a source of power. Because then if they're in a source of power, there's no authority over them, they're not going to be held accountable for it. And then also at the same time, they will have another supply on the side who's validating the false self to make them feel attractive and desirable, as though they're a good person as well. And this is both happening at the same time, simultaneously. So then on one hand, they feel powerful over you because they're dominating you, they're controlling you, they're intimidating you, even though they are a bad person. But then it gives them that authority, it makes them feel in control. Even though they may feel like that's undesirable because you're harming someone. But then at the same time, simultaneously, they've also got the new supply on the side, who is validating them and making them feel attractive and desirable. So they've got both of these things going on simultaneously. And I know this video is a bit, it may seem a bit rushed, but I really just want to get as much information out as I can, because as you know, there's a lot of distractions going on around me, a lot of noise, and I've learned that it doesn't really matter where I go, it's going to follow me around this area. So I just want to make sure that you get this information, that you stay safe, you stay protected from these fake, disingenuous people, because they will reverse it on you. They will leave you doubting yourself. They will leave you feeling insecure. They will sabotage you. They'll do anything to construct a false reality to put you at a disadvantage, when it's all just because they do not accept themselves. And that's what it all comes down to. And it's a result of all of the shame that they feel. This is the root of the disorder, is the envy and the shame. And you got to think, like, just imagine a hypothetical situation where it's like, and this doesn't have to be a narcissist, this could be a victim of a narcissist as well. So maybe a few years ago they got into a bit of trouble with the law. Maybe they assaulted someone. Maybe they lashed out, they punched them. Could have been a victim of narcissistic abuse, because as we know, they will drive you crazy. They will push and provoke you until you finally react. And then they'll twist it and blame you for that. So, in this hypothetical situation, let's assume that it's not a narcissist, because then it makes more sense later on. So, okay, this person assaulted someone, they punched them a few years ago, and they accepted that. They went to court, they pled guilty, they were held accountable for it. Maybe they did time, maybe they did 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, depending on how bad it was. When that person comes out, even though they've done time and they've been held accountable for it, they face justice, they're still gonna feel guilt and shame. They're still gonna feel bad about it. If someone was to bring it up in a conversation, even though it may have happened years ago. And I know the noise is getting bad again, I'm sorry. I'm doing my best, honestly. But no matter where I go, it's gonna follow me around. I will try to come back over here though. So yeah, in that hypothetical situation, even though the person did time, they faced justice, they were held accountable. And of course, that will help to relieve some of the shame and the guilt, because they've already compensated, they faced justice, they were held accountable for it. So they're not going to be feeling that bad about it as they may have been feeling straight after it. Because that's typically how it goes. So as time passes, our wounds begin to heal. So while we may have done something bad, and not that you may have assaulted someone, but you may have done something you're not proud of in the past, with time our wounds begin to heal, and we can relieve some of that guilt and shame, especially if we were held accountable for it and we showed remorse, we apologized, we resolved it, we made amends. Then you can pass it, you can let it go. And the problem with these narcissists, and this is why they're so erratic, so chaotic, it's because many of them, they are abusive, manipulative, deceptive, they're con artists, they'll stalk you, they'll harass you, they engage in immoral and illegal activities. And not only that, many of them, they get away with it. So they're not held responsible, they're not held accountable. They've knowingly been deceptive and dishonest in situations, and they've knowingly caused harm to people, and they've gotten away with it without any accountability, no punishment, no remorse, no efforts to make amends, no resolve. So of course, it doesn't matter how much time goes by, that shame will follow them. And this is why in older age they seem even more bitter and resentful for that reason, because it's kind of like they've done all of these things in the past, and then just anything could trigger it to come up again. Or they may just be feeling insecure one day, or they haven't got much supply, and then it comes back up, and then it just takes over them. Because the more they try to bury it and forget about it, the more that it just destroys them. Because they never attended to it, they never held themselves accountable. There was no resolve, no accountability, no punishment. And so they can't reform. How can you reform when there's no acceptance? And this is why they will never be happy. And this is why in some situations you can see some people who, they may have broken the law, they may have done things wrong, but then they did time, they went to prison, or maybe they were on probation, they did community service, and then you can see them move on from that. It's almost like they begin a new life, and things start to get a lot better for them. So you might even see them have a healthy relationship. Maybe they start a business, they get a new job, and things start going well for them. They start to build a life for themselves. Because yes, that can happen when a person is held accountable, when they're disciplined, when they face justice, when they make amends, and when they genuinely, as a result of facing the consequences for their actions, they want to be different. They want to be better. Of course, we don't see that with narcissists, because it's like they feel like they can do whatever they want and get away with it, as though there's no repercussions for their behavior. And that's how the shame just continues to grow within them. And as clinical studies show, bullies are at a 10 to 25 times more risk of developing a psychiatric condition more than their own victims. And just think about that figure for a moment, because even if it was double the risk, that is a lot. It's 10 to 25 times more risk than their own victims who they are bullying or intimidating. And yet we look at these narcissists and we wonder, why are they that way? Why are they so erratic? Why are they so all over the place? Why are they so crazy? Why can't they just keep it together? We wonder why. And that's because it's all of this going on in their minds, and they don't accept themselves. They never want to accept themselves. They never want to be connected to reality. They don't want anything to do with it. And instead, they just rather continue to live this fake life, even though they will never be happy, but it's just too painful to deal with old wounds, to deal with who they are. And not always old wounds. I mean, some of these people, it's not just the case of they did something a long time ago, years ago. I mean, fair enough, of course, a person can grow and move on from that. They can become better. With these narcissists, they are actively engaged in abusive, harmful, even criminal activity. And of course, that's unhealthy. It's bad, it's wrong, it's damaging. Not just for the person they're doing it to, but 10 to 25 times more damaging for them. So of course they can't behave normally. And especially if they're confronted with their own victim. And I hate to bring up another situation like this again, and I know it may be triggering for some of you, so I'm sorry about that. It does trigger you. or if it does bring up any emotional flashbacks. But I think that this, given this situation, will be helpful. So if you imagine a situation where a narcissist assaulted their victim and left a bruise on their face, to see that person again after what they've done to them, or maybe they put them in a wheelchair, to see them again, of course, that's going to trigger them. It's going to trigger the narcissist. It's going to bring up a lot of shame in them. Because what they're seeing in that person, what that person is going through, what they're dealing with now, as a result of what's been done to them, when the narcissist has to witness that, it's reflecting back to them who they actually are and what they don't want to accept about themselves. And of course, for us, when we've experienced reactive abuse, we've been punched and provoked, have we done something bad that we're not proud of, and maybe we feel like it was a bit over the top, a bit exaggerated for what was actually happening, we want to make amends, and we want to make things right. At least until we realise we're dealing with a narcissist, and no matter how much you try to make things better, that actually just makes things worse. That makes them hate or resent you even more. But otherwise, in a normal situation, that's typically what we would do. But as for a narcissist, that is the opposite. And I feel so bad for those of you who have been through this, but I'm sure many of you can relate that if a narcissist put their hands on you, if they harmed you in some sort of way, and when they see you going through it, maybe they see the harm that they have caused you, and it could be any type of way. It could be physical, it could be emotional abuse, it could be financial. When they see the harm that they have caused, it triggers them to self-reflect on the monster that they actually are as a result of what they've done. It triggers their shame, and as Dr. Arnie mentioned in her videos, the shame abuse cycle. So they feel shame, and whatever they did before that harmed you, they just want to continue on that path full force. And they will just do the exact same thing they did before again. And also we see this with child victims of abuse. When narcissists, they recognize that you've been a victim of abuse in childhood, and they feel shame because of that. They feel as though, you know, they're supposed to do something about it. They're meant to care for you. They're meant to be there for you. And because it triggers them to reflect on who they actually are and how bad they are, then what tends to happen is they will do the very thing that was done to you already. Whatever hurt you in your childhood, whatever traumatized you, they'll just go full force on that and do it again. And it does recall to my memory as a video I watched a few days ago about this this crime, this murder of a girl who had a fear of fire. So she was afraid of fire because something happened to her as a child, and the murderer was an arsonist. So he used fire in this this murder, and he burned her alive. And this is something that we commonly see with a narcissist. Whatever traumatized you, whatever hurt you in the past, they will just keep on with that. They'll go full force ahead with it in an attempt to deflect the shame and to humiliate you and to make you feel to reopen old wounds that you already feel shame about yourself, or you feel like it humiliated you. They will reopen those old wounds to deflect from themselves. But in all honesty, I think it does go even deeper than that. And I'm just recollecting something that I saw in a video a few days ago, from where the murderer reopened someone's childhood wounds and used that to trigger them even more as part of the murder. So I don't know that much about it, in all honesty. I know what happens on the surface of it, but I hope that brings some clarity to you. But yeah, these are all just reasons why they will never be happy. And I know it got quite dark in this one, but this is really what it comes down to. It's because of the darkness inside of them. That's why they can't find happiness. Well, as for us, it's all about truth-telling and just accepting what was done to us and accepting the things that we did too. Accepting the times that we did things wrong. Because yes, they pushed and provoked us, as they do, because the last thing they want to do is go within and have to look at themselves and all of the things that they've done. You know, they're actively abusive, they're actively engaged in illegal and immoral activities, they're doing deliberate things harmful to you. And that's why it's all of this deflection, devaluation, and just pressuring you for that reason. It's hyper-focused on you and just being all about you and how bad you are, or just degrading you, to just take the focus off themselves, and instead they're perfect, they're the judge, jury, and executioner. And that's why, while you're with them, you probably shouldn't take too much accountability for things, because when you're playing by the rules with them, that's not going to work in your favour. Being the bigger person, that's not going to make them go lightly on you. That's just going to want to make them punish you even more. So instead, what you want to do is just use the grey rock, observe, absorb. And once you get yourself out of that situation, because you realise you're dealing with a narcissist or maybe even a psychopath, so once you get out of the situation, then you can come back within. Then you can focus on healing. Because the reality is, you're not going to get closure, you're not going to get validation from someone who's not even connected to themselves. That's just not going to happen. And some of you may wonder, what if the narcissist is doing that? What if they're not taking accountability with you, and then they're off in another situation and they're moving on, accepting themselves? And of course that's not going to happen, because if that was going to happen, they would have done that with you. They would have accepted themselves with you. They were disconnected, and they will remain disconnected wherever they go. But as for you, you tried. You tried to get through to them. You tried to make things normal. You tried to make things right. And that's how you're going to continue doing that once you've left the situation as well. But honestly, I didn't expect this video to go so deep and dark. I was trying to keep it light, but I have been kind of pressured in this video, as you can see from all of the noise, distractions, and it's just following me around wherever I go in this park. So of course when that happens, I don't want to let go of it. I don't want to just jump ship from helping you and giving you this important advice. And I'm going to fight for it. I'm going to fight for you. I hope that I have done that in this video. But also, I didn't want to trigger anyone with this one, with the some of the scenarios that I mentioned, and talking about assaults, being attacked. I didn't really want to go down that road, but I think that it was helpful. I think that it can help you. And unfortunately, the very things that trigger us, the very things that cause us to feel shame, that's the exact place where we need to go. That's what we need to reflect on. In a safe space, of course, where we're with someone who you trust, because that's the only time when you can be vulnerable, when you know that you're not at risk of danger or harm. You can't do that around a predator. And I like to think that this is a safe space for all of you, where you can come on here, and although when you're around the narcissist, you're all closed off, built up a wall, you don't want to let them in because you know you let them in, they're going to harm you. On here, it doesn't have to be like that. You can share your personal stories, you can share the things that you've been through, and we can work through that together, because that's what it's about. Yes, we may have been through some things, we may have done some things that we're not proud of, and that's okay. That's what makes us human. What we got to be focused on is moving forward, because we don't want to hold on to these things forever. We want to move onwards and upwards. We want to keep things moving forward. We want to remain positive and productive. And that is what separates us from these narcissists. Because with them, and this is how you differentiate, this is how you know you're dealing with, for them it's all just about moving backwards. You take one step forward with them, it's 2 steps back. It's all about just remaining in the past because they were traumatized in their childhood. They developed a sense of arrogance and entitlement. Now everyone has to pay the price for what they went through as a child. And because of that, everyone has to be held back. There's no moving forward with them. But I do not want that for you. I want you all to move forward with me, because that's where I'm going. But that's really a big part of it, when it all comes down to it, is that with these narcissists, there's no progression. It's 1 step forward, 2 steps back. You could be with them for years and they're still arguing about the same stuff. They're arguing about things that you did everything in your power to resolve and nothing was ever good enough for them. And you may have done far more than what was initially expected of you. You may have done far more than what they deserved. But as for the things that were done for you, nothing was ever resolved with that. They never did anything to try to make amends for what was done to you. And yet they're still talking about their situation because they're always the victim. It's always this woe is me, damsel in distress mentality. It's always all about them. Because what they really want is just attention, and they'll do anything they possibly can to get it. They just want you to attend to them because they can't take care of themselves. And that's why they need a source of supply. They've always got to have someone who's there for them, and it's not about love, it's not about connection, it's not about building something together, it's just all about them. Because they cannot connect, they cannot attach to you because they've got so much shame. They do not accept themselves, and that's why they'll never be happy. That's why they will never be happy. And that's why whenever you're around them, whenever they come around you, honestly, it's kind of like wherever you go, having a storm cloud above your head, and it's just raining down on you constantly wherever you go. That's what it's like. And the reason they're that way is because there's all of this internal chaos going on in their minds. There's the constant battle in their minds. Because they're pushing themselves away, they're resisting it, they don't want to accept it, and it keeps coming back. And I'm sure many of you, when you're around a narcissist, you may be feeling that way as well. You may be feeling like there's so much stress, so much pressure. But that's because you're the victim. And they're constantly attacking you, they're harming you, they're triggering you. And you just want normality, you just want peace. So of course, we share similar experiences to them because they're putting it onto us. That's why. I see we got 100 live viewers. If you've enjoyed this video so far, give me a thumbs up down below. Thank you. It seems to be a bit more quieter around here now for a moment. Maybe all the demons are on a leash, I don't know what's going on. But let's calm down a bit. Let's bring things down, slow it down, and give me your questions, I will answer them and respond to them. Let's return things back to normal, the standard Narc Survivor. Slow, peaceful, calm. I'm sure many of you, my regular viewers, it's like you didn't have to see anything. You don't even have to see the distractions in the background. You don't have to hear the noise. All you have to see is just the this sudden, irregular change in how I communicate to you. Because it's just so random, isn't it? It's like all of a sudden I start speeding up, talking faster. And it's because of all of the distractions in the background. All of the smear campaigns, the gang stalking. That's just what it does. But despite that, I focus on the message. The message is number one. That's my purpose. That's what I came here to do. To make you more aware, to bring the truth. That's what we're about. We're about awareness, truth. And what are they about? Betrayal, deception, lies, manipulation. And that's the difference between us. But yeah, give me your questions, or I'll read them out and respond to them. I always look forward to your questions. I enjoy communicating with you. I enjoy helping you, giving you my knowledge, my experiences. Arabella says, even if he hit me, I would never tell the police. I do think that the police should be involved in these types of situations. The situation should be brought under control, and the perpetrator should be brought to justice. But then also keep in mind that victims of narcissistic abuse may have hit the narcissist. So it's not always about the exact moment that something went wrong, something happened. That's how narcissists think about it. They want to hone it into the exact moment and just forget everything that happened before, because they have this toxic amnesia. They disconnect from themselves, and in their minds they can't do anything wrong. Often the most important thing is not the actual incident itself, but what was leading up to it. What caused the person to react in that way? Was it because of another person? Was it because of something external? Or did the problem exist within themselves? Because honestly, I can say, in my past, I've reacted in ways that I wasn't proud of. But each and every time, it wasn't because of my internal state. It was because of something outside of me that provoked me deliberately. And this is what they want to cover up and hide, because deep down they know the problem is them. They know that they have a problem. And that's why they go out of their way to manipulate, to push and provoke you, to get you to react. And it's deliberate. So sometimes that can create a problem, because with the police, sometimes they're looking at what happened in the moment, and victims of narcissistic abuse can get in trouble for defending themselves, because narcissists, they only like to focus on the moment as well. So that can create a problem. So it's difficult, you know. It's like we're supposed to get the police involved when something goes wrong. But how do you know that the police are going to get it right? How do you know that you're not going to be blamed, and that you're not going to get into trouble? So it can be difficult sometimes, and the police, the court systems, sometimes is corrupt. But yeah, it's a big part of it. It's like narcissists just hate you being you. They hate to see you happy, because you can be authentic, you can accept yourself, and that's how they look at it, because they're egotistical. Whenever they see you doing something, you're enjoying something, you're with someone, to them it's just like it's all about you. Like, they watch my videos, and to them it's all about me. I'm the star of the show. Well, for me, in my mind, it's all about you and how I can serve you and bring you awareness of what you've been through. But for them, because they're so jealous and insecure, and they don't accept themselves, they get very jealous. They feel like they're missing out. Like, of course, they want to be themselves. They wish that they could just walk around with their mask off, and they don't have to manipulate, they don't have to deceive anyone, and people will still accept them. They wish it could be like that for them, but it can't, because they've done a lot of bad things. They're actively engaged in immoral and illegal activities. So the only type of people that would accept them are other criminals just like them, other bad people, other horrible fake people. That's the only type of people they're going to get along with. But fortunately for them, that's what most people are like in the world today. And then they bond together over your destruction. They turn against you, they hate you, they're envious of you for that reason. Thank you for the donation, Miss Goldie. She says, snacks are on me, friend. I appreciate it. I will get some snacks later when I'm working on my next video for you. I really do appreciate all donations. It just motivates me to keep going and to keep doing what I do for everyone. And I know that it helps you. I know that it comforts you, it validates you after what you've been through. Because that's exactly how it is for me after all of the things that were done to me by narcissists. I get on YouTube and I watch the videos and it all begins to make a lot more sense. And it's good to know that I'm not alone as well. Highfly G123 says the police are not your friends. Don't expect help from them. I wish I could disagree with that, but unfortunately, it's how it is a lot of times, isn't it? A lot of police in the world today are corrupt. And I'm sure I saw a statistic, something like 10% of prisoners are actually innocent. Just think about how wrong, how inhumane that is. But all of those people in prison, they're not even supposed to be there. They could be there for 1 year, 20 years, a life sentence. Even if it's just for 1 day, it doesn't matter. They shouldn't be there. And that's just how corrupt things are. And then the person who's actually at fault, nothing's happening to them. They just go about their lives. But that's how it is. I mean, some of the most dangerous people, they're just still out there on the streets. They're the ones who get away with it. Because that just damages them even more and it incentivizes them to keep going and harming people. And that's how, as I mentioned in a past video, in the UK, there's 3,000 cases reported to the police every day for violence against women, physical violence. And that's only in the UK. That's 1.2 million cases reported a year to the police. For violence doesn't even include harassment. And harassment, that could be sexual harassment as well, that's not included. Those are only the cases that are reported. And you've got to think, 1.2 million cases a year. How many women are even in the UK? No more than 20 million women over the age of 18. Probably a lot less. And this is mostly from Eastern European and Asian men who have immigrated to the UK. And I did more research and I found that a study was done on 10,000 Asian men. 1 in 4 of those 10,000 men admitted to raping a woman. And keep in mind that we might assume most of them wouldn't admit to that because of how bad that is to rape someone. So who knows, is it not 1 in 4, is it actually 3 out of 4 of those 10,000 men? Those 10,000 Asian men? I don't know exactly what it is. That it was 1 in 4 that admitted to it. And you can see more about that study by searching it on Google Just type in how common is rape in Asia, and you can also type in how common is rape in Eastern Europe as well. And it's really bad, you know, in this day and age, that so many men out there, they still do not respect women's rights. Because here's the thing, women are people too. Of course, back in the Middle Ages, they didn't have the same legal rights that we did. But now it should be widely accepted that they are human, they have human rights, they have legal rights. And unfortunately, it seems as though there's murderers, rapists, child molesters serving life sentences in prison with more human rights and legal rights than they do. Now, how effed up is that? Now, that's how you know that this is more about envy. So these men envy those women, or they're jealous of them. Because that's really what this comes down to. But I am completely against that. Anyone who violates anyone's human rights, legal rights, that is criminal, that is evil. And they are horrible people for doing that. That's not to say that we become just like them and we start violating their human or legal rights. No, we deal with them properly. They're still human. They still have their rights. And we still treat them with respect. Just as criminals in prison, they've got their human rights, they've got their legal rights, they're treated with respect. Yes, they're being punished, they're being disciplined, they're being rehabilitated, because we don't destroy people. We try to get them to reform, we try to move things in the right direction. That's the right way to do things. We're not in the Middle Ages anymore. And it's the same thing with these women. And there's just no justification for it. There isn't. Women deserve love and respect. Ice Cold says, but young girls like around 18 to 20 were starting to explore this world, would be used and destroyed. They became narc by their childhood trauma. I'm trying to protect the girl from ruining her life. Honestly, I know you mean well, Ice Cold. But the more that you try and protect narcissists and young women, I mean, you know, that's another thing. Because of the feminist movement, and women just want to be free and independent. Honestly, especially with those who are younger, it might work better with those who are older. But with the younger girls, the more that you try to help them and move them into the right direction, the more that they're going to rebel. And that's just how it is, because with all of these trends in society, and it's like they glamorize narcissism. So it is difficult. You know, we really need to start making love and respect cool again. That's how it should be. That's what should be brought into popular culture. Because with narcissists, as we know, they degrade and humiliate it. Anything to do with love, loyalty, and respect, they just make a joke out of it. And then they turned it into being cool, being popular, being relevant, trending. It's all about being bad, being sick, and you're just doing the wrong things, being antisocial, being covered in tattoos and piercings, using drugs, smoking weed. This is what's cool these days. You know what should be cool? Taking care of yourself and respecting your body, respecting other people. Why is that not cool? But that's just how it is with a lot of people these days. And we've just moved into this degenerative society. It's been going on for the last few decades, and it just keeps getting worse. But what's good is that narcissistic abuse is now trending. It's become mainstream. So that's something. It's because, you know, I think what they were trying to do when it began to become popular, they were trying to turn it into something else. They were trying to make it seem cool to be self-absorbed. They were trying to glamorize it. Really, it's nothing cool about it at all. What's cool about being dead inside? Having no love, no connection. How are you supposed to build a life or build a family for yourself with that? And so none of these things are cool. It just destroys you, it ruins you. Going to clubs every week, drinking alcohol, smoking weed, being covered in tattoos, only caring about yourself. How is that supposed to be good for anyone? It's not even good for the people who do it. It's self-destructive. Arabella asks, will he change if I go no contact? The only way that they could ever change is if you do go no contact, because then what they're doing, their manipulation isn't working for them. They're not getting your reaction, they're not getting supply from you. So that's the only possible thing that could then turn them inwards, if they don't have flying monkeys or supply. Which means that then, yes, they could heal, they could reform, it's possible. However, it is extremely rare. And if that does happen, you'd likely be the first person to know about it. Because instantly, by doing that, it would cause them to feel a lot of guilt and shame that they have to process. And what better way to work through that than to return to you, take accountability, and try to make amends. So typically, yes, if they heal, if they reform, you will be the first one to know. The problem is, it can be difficult to differentiate, because they can be very convincing when they come at you with these fake apologies and false epiphanies. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if in some situations a narcissist did come back and they did heal, they did recover, and the victim got it wrong and pushed them away. That can happen. And no one talks about this. I don't think anyone ever has talked about this, so I'm bringing this to you. This may be the first insight that you get into this, because as you know, I talked to a man named Jack, who is a self-aware covert narcissist, who is now focusing on healing and managing his condition. And his experience from the other side of this is that from healing from his disorder, he's now noticing that everyone else seems narcissistic. Everyone else is accusing, blaming him, deflecting, being narcissistic towards him, and using his condition to demonize him and make him at fault for everything. And honestly, I could see that coming. That's exactly how it goes. It's essentially like if you imagine a thief who, let's say they live in a small town and they're known by everyone for stealing from a store, and maybe they got in trouble for it. I don't know why they would be in the newspaper for something so minor, but let's just say that they were, and everyone knew about it, and maybe they did time, and they felt bad for it. They realized that what they did was wrong. They healed, they moved on from it, and maybe they even went around and did some community service voluntarily. They helped out around the town. They wanted to make the community better. But despite that, now it's like everyone else is acting narcissistic towards them. Every time they go to a store, everyone's just giving them this stare and just spying on them wherever they go, just waiting for them to steal something. Imagine how it feels for that person. That person who, yes, they may have done something wrong in the past, but they reformed, they healed, they did time, they were held accountable, they were punished. And even after that, they still went above and beyond, voluntarily helped out around the community. And they're still looked at like a bad person. And everyone still treats them bad. Now that's not right. And honestly, I am completely against that. Because if you can see someone's moving in the right direction, they've got that self-awareness, they're learning to manage their condition, then we should support that type of person. We shouldn't be against them. That's what we should want. We should want people to change and grow and become better. And yes, we may still be hurt by the past, the things that were done to us. But if they're trying to make amends, they want to make things right, let them. And then we can move on from that together. Of course, at the same time, still be wary, because narcissists will use this tactic against you as well. I'm not saying it's easy. It can be difficult to discern between what is real and what is not. But what I've learned from my experience is that time reveals all. Just give it time and they will show you who they really are. these troll comments getting sexual now. They start getting sexual when they get desperate for a reaction, because these types of people, they actually can't get any fulfillment sexually anyway, because they don't accept themselves, so they can't experience a connection or intimacy, and instead it's just a means of power and control. So that's it, when you see them getting sexual in these disturbing comments in the live chat, it's really just out of desperation. They'll do anything to get you to notice them. It's really sad. Ventura 187 says, so then are narcissists supposed to be alone forever? Or are they supposed to be with other narcissists? I mean, who's to say what they're supposed to do? Of course, what makes sense is that narcissists should be held accountable for what they've done. They should be disciplined and punished, and maybe they go to jail or they're on probation, whatever it is, they're held accountable for it, and then they should be given a fresh start. So they come back out into the community, we give them another chance, we see what they do, and that's how it goes. We let them back in. And that's your personal choice, if you continue a relationship with them or not. I mean, you don't have to do that. Of course, that's down to your personal reasons on whether or not you want to do that. But yeah, the right thing to do is to let them back in. That's what we're supposed to do in most situations. Of course, if you're seeing a pattern of behavior, you're seeing repeated abusive actions, and there's no signs of improvement, and in fact they're just continuing to degenerate, then that reveals that they are condemned, they are reprobates. And that's why in some countries they still have the death penalty, because no matter what, this person is never going to conform. They're never going to behave appropriately, because they have a very serious mental condition that cannot be reversed or resolved. And that's why in those types of situations, society will just ostracize them. And they may even become reprobates in the eyes of God, where it's like they're just left to wander off and do what they want on their own. They're not held accountable for anything. They're just left to degenerate and destroy themselves, because essentially people have given up on them. We don't know what else to do with them. And unfortunately, that's just the way it is. But in a perfect world, we would want to let these people back in. We would want to give them another chance. I mean, that's the whole point. The whole point of it all was that they weren't behaving appropriately. They were abusive. They were harmful. That's the problem we had with them, wasn't it? Of course, yes, we want them to be the opposite of that. So it makes sense. But unfortunately, as a result of their own condition, their own behaviors, it doesn't normally work out that way. because that's just the way that they are. And they obviously went through such extreme abuse in their childhood and they lack the internal strength to deal with it, so they just want more. They want to cause more damage, more harm to people, and they want to steal more things from you, they want to rob you, because they feel like it's just unfair. They wish they had a better life, they wish that they were just maybe a better person, and they feel that other people should compensate for that. As though society just dealt them a bad hand in life, as it did for many of us, but we still got on with it. But yeah, this is why they're so difficult to deal with, and that's the whole point about it, is that narcissism is maladaptive, it's inflexible. So it's all about them, it's only ever going to be all about them, and it just doesn't change. Sentinel87 says that's probably why they relapse. People want to always keep seeing them the same way. Now that could be a problem with victims as well, because if you want to keep seeing the narcissist the same way, that reveals something about you. It reveals that you're not being authentic, that you may have a false self that is tied to them and who they're supposed to be, for you to feel like you're still a victim, or however it may be that you're seeing it. I mean, that can be a problem whenever you need someone to be a certain way, just for you to feel like you're you. That reveals that you're not really being you. It's inauthentic. But this is typically something we see with narcissists. I mean, true victims of narcissistic abuse, all they really want is for the narcissist to change and come back. I mean, just look at the views on YouTube, that's all that they want. They want the narcissist to just have this epiphany and wake up. It's mainly the abusers, the narcissists, who don't want their victim to change or heal. They want you to relapse. Those are the narcissists who tend to be that way. But the good people, the victims, the empaths, they want to see change, they want to see growth, they want to see things moving forward. There's so many comments here in the live chat. Unfortunately, I can't answer them all, but I am reading them. Pickles Rick says you have a beautiful channel, Narc Survivor. Thank you, Pickles Rick. But I know I keep saying it, but it's not all about me. You know, it's not just all about you know, what I'm doing or what I'm you know, it's not all about my image and how I'm presenting myself to you, and I'm just the star of the show. This is all about the viewers. I'm just a vessel to bring the information through. But this is all just about you. I mean, we all built this community together. This is our community for the benefit of all of us. But yeah, I think that's good for this video. Honestly, at this point, I'm feeling a bit dizzy. It can be difficult sometimes, you know, to keep things normal, rational. And there's all of the distractions and noise and all of this street theatre going on. It's difficult because then these two realities just seem to clash. You've got the reality that's more about truth and acceptance, and there's just all of the fakeness going on behind the scenes as well, which interacts, and it just confuses everything, of course. So that's why I do get very drained by the end of the video. And that's why the grey rock is very important. That's why Ross Rosenberg advocates for that a lot. Where you don't ever be vulnerable around narcissists. Don't ever open up. Don't ever let them in. Let them think whatever they want. Just keep them out. Don't share that side of yourself with them, because they will harm you. They will damage you. That's how they get in. By you giving them an open door. And before you engage with them, you may have felt so free-flowing, free, natural, pure, authentic, sincere. And then you get around them, and then it's just like you feel unsure of yourself, you feel contaminated, you feel infected, you feel automated. Because that's how they are. They don't have a true self. They don't have a real identity. They're chameleons, they're shapeshifters. You get around them and they just harm you. You know, it really helps when you can get onto a video like this and someone can open up, they can be truthful. They can be vulnerable with you. They can present their authentic self. That could be very healing to see that. Because of course, when you're around a narcissist, you can't do that. And when you can't do that, it damages you, it disconnects you from yourself. Especially if you're trauma bonded and you experience some form of excitement or pleasure in doing that. I mean, you should never find enjoyment or satisfaction, a thrill in disconnecting from yourself and engaging in some kind of trauma bond. That's never good, but that's how it is with these narcissists. They trauma bond with you because that's the only way that they can bond. by dumping their trauma onto you. But yeah, I think that's good for this video. And I shared as much of my knowledge or experience as I could in this live. My almost 7 years of research on this disorder, a lifetime of experience provided to you in this live video free of charge. But of course, if you'd like to give thanks and show your support, you can donate by going to my PayPal, which is paypal.me/Narc Survivor. And I do appreciate all donations, no matter how small. Also, give me a thumbs up down below if you found this video helpful. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Hit subscribe and click all notifications so that you will be notified when I go live in the future. If you'd like to book a one-on-one coaching session with me, just go to my website. It is narcsurvivor.co.uk. And you can follow me on Instagram to see content from my trip last year to Vietnam that I'm now posting on there every day, and Taiwan as well. It is Narc Survivor YouTube on Instagram. Alright, thank you all for joining me on another Narc Survivor live video. Got the towers there in the background. I appreciate all of your support, and I will speak to you in another live video very soon.